I know I said there wasn't going to be any more F1 videos, but it's the Vegas Grand Prix coming up, and it could be an absolute disaster of a race. The circuit is 17 corners and 6.2 kilometers long, but some of those corners aren't really corners. And as you can see from the track map, Vegas is mostly 2 very long straights, followed by a string of slow corners. It's going to have a Monza-like feel to it. I also can't wait for the commentators to call incidents using the real corner names. And there's been an incident at Treasure Island. It's going to be absolutely bizarre and absolutely brilliant, but probably for all the wrong reasons. You may think this is the first time we're heading to Vegas with Formula One, but it isn't. In fact, in the early 80s, F1 held the Caesar Palace Grand Prix, the last event taking place in 1982. So F1 has tried coming to Vegas before. Let's talk about the positives of the Vegas Grand Prix before we get into the negatives. Whatever you feel about the racing, the actual circuit, the racing, Vegas does look fantastic. During the day, it doesn't look that great, but in the evenings, it looks brilliant. And we've got some pictures of the pit lane and the pit buildings, and they look fantastic. They've even got that Formula One logo on the top of the roof. It all looks seriously impressive. Then we race down the strip past, the Bellagio and all the other casinos, Caesar's Palace, all of these really iconic places in Vegas. And then even going past the brand new MSG Sphere, which we don't really know what's going to be on that during the race and the practice sessions, but Formula One does have it for the whole weekend. Maybe just advertising, maybe something else, I don't know. But Vegas will look the part. We know that. It will look the part. We've been round the circuit a little bit on the Formula One game, so we can get an idea of what it looks like, but forget the racing just for a split second. I know we shouldn't, but in terms of a place for a race, it's kind of mad, really. The problem is, well, the racing is what should be the pinnacle, but we're not in Vegas because it's a good race circuit. That's the shame. We know they're going to make this into a show for a couple of reasons. The first reason being it's America, and sporting events in America are usually way over the top. There'll be live music, we know that. There'll be performances, there'll be fireworks, there'll be all the things you can imagine is going to make this into, or attempt to make it into, the biggest event and then showcase what Vegas is capable of. If you watch the Miami Grand Prix, you will have seen the racing driver intros from LL Cool J. I'm expecting that, but maybe even more dramatic. The reality is we don't know what's going to happen with the race. We're all expecting it to be a dud, but we don't know. There's a chance it could be a good race, but based on the layout that we have, it doesn't really scream good racing. And there could be, well, some bigger concerns with tyre temperature. Let's look at the circuit first. The layout itself doesn't lend itself to good racing. Turns 1 to 4 are going to be corners where drivers will be forced to follow, and then there is a medium length straight with an overtaking opportunity down into turn 5, but it's tight. Then that goes on to a very tight section of turns at 6, 7, 8, 9 around the MSG Sphere, where I'll be surprised if any drivers try and move. Then there's a very fast section heading down to Treasure Island, which is then a sharp left leading onto the strip. It's an absurdly long straight, which clearly will be the best overtaking spot on the track. The layout isn't a good layout by a long way. It's designed with the strip in mind. The whole purpose of this is to get that strip like center stage so you can have racing down the strip. The problem is the layout doesn't really lend itself very well to good racing. The reality is, though, if you choose Vegas as a destination for your Grand Prix, you're not choosing it because of good racing. Formula One never chooses race circuits because they want good racing. They always say they want good racing, and then they do the opposite and pick circuits and street circuits that don't lend themselves to good racing. If we wanted good racing, there are plenty of circuits, some that we've raced on before, Portimao, Sepang, these sorts of tracks, real race circuits that we could go to. We don't go to them, we come to Vegas. Why? Well, it's money. And don't let anyone else tell you any different. It's money, it's all about money, and the racing is secondary. It isn't the way it should be, but it is the way that it is. The other issue Vegas has, though, is the cold temperature. Now, I know that sounds a little bit weird. Vegas isn't known for its low temperatures, but we're heading into the middle of November, and the race is going to take place at 10 p.m. local time. It's cold in the desert at night. Now, there's been reports that the temperature will be as low as 4 to 5 degrees, which would be very bad for a Formula One tyre. But I've looked at the forecast myself, and that looked to be at the low end of the estimates. It seems as though for race, it's going to be around about 10 to 12 degrees. Still very cold, but not as cold as it was suggested. So maybe there was a bit of an overreaction there. The problem is, though, that corners are where cars can build the tyre temperature, especially if there's fast-flowing sections. They can build some tyre temperature there. The issue with Vegas is that there's long straights preceding any of the corners, and long straights. This is where the cars will lose tyre temperature. So even if they're able to get temperatures through turns 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's then a straight. And then the slow section going around the sphere, which is 7, 8, 9, it then goes on to a long straight. So any temperature you will have built, you will have lost by the time you start the lap again. So there could be real issues with cars locking up, losing traction. It could be a bit of an ice rink, especially when you consider that the majority of the track is just a normal road 90% of the time. So when they first go there for the first practice session, it's going to be dusty, it's going to be dirty, there's going to be a lack of grip. And then you add in the low temperature, we could be in line for some really odd moments, some sliding, some mistakes. And I would be amazed if there isn't a lot of red flags, yellow flags, safety cars during the race as well. If we get away with none of those, I will be pretty shocked. It's also prime for engine related issues because we're at the back end of the season now. There's only one more race after this, Abu Dhabi. So drivers will be on their last allocation of engines. And this engine's going to have to be at full throttle for a large percentage of the race. It's just something to consider. We could see some issues with engines. I'm excited for the Vegas race, but for all the wrong reasons. I think it will be a good race in terms of chaos and madness, if that's what you're into, but I don't think it's going to be a good race in terms of racing and competitiveness. I hope that I'm proved wrong there. I expect to see a lot of incidents over the weekend, even in the practice sessions, accidents, cars really struggling for grip. And I think it's just gonna be chaos. Oh, and it's expected to rain on Thursday as well. Wowzers. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you for the Vegas Grand Prix.